Hi, everyone. Welcome to our book buzz on Monday afternoon at New Voices, New Rooms. Happy to have you join us. We are going to start today with Peter Blackstock with Grove Atlantic. Peter, it's all yours.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. I hope you can hear me okay. And yes, I'm really excited to be here talking to you about these books. And I am at Grove. I'm an editor and the deputy publisher. I've got the good fortune of working with authors like Douglas Stewart, Viet Thanh Nguyen, Bernardine Evaristo, Sayaka Murata. And I'm going to tell you about some books that we've got, one this fall and then the rest this winter. So Foster, you can see already on the bigger screen. This is the new novel by Claire Keegan, coming in November. And thanks to all of you, Small Things Like These was an Indie Next pick last year. It was this massive word of mouth success. My mother-in-law loved it. In other big news, it was just longlisted for the Booker Prize a week or two back. And Foster is the follow-up, and although it was written before Small Things, but it's every bit as good as that book. It's very short, a beautiful piece of writing, packs the punch of a much longer novel. And there's this incredible momentum with a film version that's just been released called The Quiet Girl. There's actually going to be Ireland's entry into the Oscars next year. It's getting the most fabulous attention. So it's a beautiful story about a young girl who's taken one summer to live with a family called the Kinsellas, who have this kind of farm. And she finds out that there's something secret within what happens, or what seems to be a very kind of well-kept, happy home. And it's really moving, very surprising. The Indie Next deadline is August 29th. So if you get a chance to read it, it's very, very short. We'd be so, so grateful for a nomination. And most of the books, this one included, are in the virtual gallery room. So do have a look there or get in contact with me or Judy Hottenson or Andrew Unger, who I think might even be in the chat, or any other contact at PGW and Grove, and we'll send it over. Then the next book is Bloodbath Nation, and we are really excited and happy to welcome Paul Auster to the Grove list. This is truly extraordinary, this book. It's a very personal project for Paul, as well as a book that's so timely in its subject. It's a book about gun violence in America. And it's personal because Paul, as he's mentioned in The Invention of Solitude, I think, gun violence affected his own family in a very kind of surprising way. His grandmother shot his grandfather, who was 36 at the time, dead, with a revolver that she kept hidden under her son's bed after they had this horrendous argument. And so this was kind of always a family secret in Paul's family. And he kind of explains that story, but he also recounts, the history of guns in America. We think of the American West as this place of kind of constant shootouts, but there were very few gun deaths at the time. In Dodge City in the late 19th century, there were 1.5 deaths average per year from guns. In Deadwood's most violent year, there were 4 deaths. So it's really extraordinary that we're now in a country where 80,000 people are wounded, 40,000 killed by guns every year. And so the number of people who are affected by those shootings really reaches the millions. So this is a really important book. It's illustrated with amazing photographs by Spencer Ostrander of sites of gun violence, kind of in this eerie quiet after it's happened. And really, I think only Paul Auster can do justice to this subject in this way. It's really special looking small hardcover coming in January. Then next is a piece of fiction, and I'm really thrilled to be presenting this book, The Guest Lecture by Martin Riker. It's the first acquisition by assistant editor Emily Burns, who works with me, and we all love this book when she got it on submission. It is fresh, funny, very original by a wonderful writer who's really beloved. I'm sure many of you know Martin Riker as the co-founder and co-publisher of the feminist press Dorothy, together with his partner Danielle Dutton. This is his second novel. Coffee House did the first one, and we're getting the most extraordinary blurbs for it. Joshua Cohen, the Pulitzer winner this year, says this has a voice as clear, sincere, and wry as any I've read in current American fiction. Eula Biss loves the book. Alejandro Zambra, I mean, it really is quite extraordinary. And it takes place over a single insomniac night where Abby, who is an economist, a feminist, a mother, a wife, many other things besides, and she's trying to prepare this speech that she has to give the next day. And going through what she's sort of trying to say, or what she wants to say, she's distracted and in fact kind of visited by this strange apparition of the economist, John Maynard Keynes, who happens to be the guy that she's meant to be talking about tomorrow. So we don't know if he's somehow visiting from the past or conjured up by her own frazzled brain, but he's going to be her helper and her companion until the morning comes. And this is really smart. It's not dense at all. It's very funny and very special, paperback original. It's on our Black Cat list, and that's coming in January. And then one that I don't have a galley for, but we don't have a cover yet, but it's on Edelweiss. The Incredible Events of Women's Cell Number 3 by Russian dissident writer Kira Yarmish. And this is a really special book that I think is going to be newsworthy. And like I studied Russian in what feels increasingly like a past life, but when I was at university, and I've read a sort of number of books in Russian, but this is the first time that I've really felt strongly enough to want to acquire one. And Kira Yarmish is a really important person. She's Alexei Navalny's press secretary. And so she works, for the opposition leader living in exile in Lithuania. If she ever returned to Russia, she would be imprisoned, much like Navalny has been. If you haven't watched the HBO documentary on Navalny, I really recommend that, just as a little side note. But she's written this extraordinary novel. I don't know where she's found the time, but it follows a young woman named Anya who is arrested after participating in a demonstration in Moscow, and she's sentenced to 10 days in a special detention center. And she shares this small cell with, bunk beds with 5 other women who come from all walks of life. And through them and through Anya's own story, we really get a picture of what it's like to be living in Russia today, particularly as a woman and particularly as a queer woman. And as Anya reminisces about her love triangle with this guy and this girl, which takes her to Siberia, she talks about her harassment when she works at the foreign ministry, talks about her parents, and you really get to sort of know her as a wonderful character. And then what really gives the book a whole other dimension is that at the end of the first chapter, something really surprising and quite scary happens, almost like in a Stephen King novel. There's this like creepy moment, and you have to read more to find out if this is in Kira's head or if something kind of otherworldly is going on in this very horrific place, this prison. There's incredible, fantastic international momentum that's coming in February, and we expect really big attention. And then the next book is My Nemesis by Charmaine Craig. Maybe you could click through on the Edelweiss, that'd be great. And this is by the author of Miss Burma, which was longlisted for the National Book Award and the Women's Prize. And I think this book's going to win Charmaine even more accolades. The writing and the voice is just astonishing. It's so poised, really, really special. It's a story of marriages, prejudgments, and the hidden sides of private people. It's a concise, short book, but it packs a punch. It's set predominantly in LA, and it follows a woman who is, she's white and she's a writer, more of a memoirist, and she ends up getting into this correspondence with a man who's a philosopher and an academic living in California. He kind of loves her work. And in Tessa, this woman's called Tessa, and in her mind, this relationship has a huge potential for developing into something more, but there's this obstacle, and it's Charlie's wife, who is called Wa, and she's a mixed-race Asian American woman. She's a writer, and she's a mother to an adoptive daughter. And Tessa kind of sees Wa just as this paragon of femininity. She thinks she's too self-effacing, doesn't care enough for her own, doesn't fight her own battles. But Tessa's going to come to see that there's a really interesting, different side to Wa that she's overlooked with dramatic consequences. We're getting amazing responses. Sarah Manguso, Antoine Wilson, Fatima Farheen Mirza all love this book. So we're excited for what's to come. And then The Applicant is an amazing debut novel. There's nothing more exciting really for us at Grove, launching a debut. We don't have a cover yet, but it's coming. Grove's editorial director, Elizabeth Schmitz, who works with Helen MacDonald, Lily King, Jeanette Winterson, she fell head over heels for this book. And it's The Applicant by Nazla Kocher. And you might know Nazla's name because she was a bookseller at Greenlight at one point. But this novel is set in Berlin, and it's the story of Layla, who's a Turkish woman working as a maid at an Alice in Wonderland themed hostel in Berlin, which is pretty shabby and run in this very kind of lackadaisical way. She gets to keep what she finds in the rooms if she wants to. She gets 2 free beers at the end of every shift, which I'm sure wasn't inspired by her time at Greenlight, but you never know. But this is a book about not having much money. It's about having cheap thrills. It's a really important and exciting, fresh, young voice. Elif Batuman loves it, Azarine van der Vliet, Alumi, and lots of other people too. And thanks so much to Emerson for that message in the chat too. I'm glad that you're also a fan. And then just with half a minute left, probably, I wanted to mention just one other thing, which is a kind of a stop press bit of news, which is that Grove is really, really excited to be publishing the new book by Abraham Verghese, the author of Cutting for Stone. So that's going to come more than 10 years in the writing. He's been working on it. It's called The Covenant of Water. That's going to come in May 2023. And it is every bit as good as Cutting for Stone. And it's been a joy to edit this book. We're going to have some early galleys before too long, so log your interest with me or Andrew or Judy or whoever at Grove or PGW, and watch this space. And thanks so much for listening and for all you do for our books and everyone else's books too. So it's been really wonderful to have a little time with you this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Peter. And up next, we have Jason with Parson Williams.
Hi everyone, I'm Jason Kincaid from Parson Weaves. Got quite a few titles to get through here today, so I'm going to dive right in. First up is from Oro Edition. It's called Building Toys by John Rock. So this is a big oversized slipcase edition of a collection of the author's, the architect's building toys from the mid-1800s to the present. So each, you can put together all of the toys, and each toy has its own double-page spread explaining the history of the project. It's very gifty, and with a purchase of one or more, Aura will provide a free display copy. Next up from Bloomsbury Academic, Love Me, Fierce and Danger. This is the first full-length book biography of James Ellroy by a leading Ellroy scholar. Didn't know there was such a thing, but there you go. Basically looks into his incredible literary career, his place in the American canon, his time in Hollywood, his father's fascination with the Black Dahlia murder. We're expecting incredible review attention from this. It's going to be a big book for Bloomsbury Academic in the fall. Next up, also from Bloomsbury Academic, Shoes and Illustrated History. This is the second revised edition of a book that came out in 2014. Basically, it is exactly what it says in the title. It's shoes throughout history, throughout fashion, perfect for Christmas. I should say that I'm focusing on big books for the fall and what we think are great gift ideas. Next up from Capstone, Mindful Mr. Sloth. This is the board book edition of a children's picture book from Katie Hudson. You all know Katie Hudson. Her books have sold over 2 million copies from Capstone. And this is coming out in August, or it's out now, I should say. Next up, also from Capstone, coming in September, You Are Life by Bao Fi, author of A Different Pond. This is basically a book-length love letter to the author's daughter and a poem in response to rising hate crimes, particularly those in the Asian community. It's gotten incredible early reviews, and we're expecting that this is going to be another hit from Bao Fi. So next up is Graphic Mundi, an imprint of Penn State University Press, distributed by Diamond. This is a graphic memoir of a woman who was uprooted from her childhood in Germany and basically set adrift by a neglectful mother in the Midwest. She basically only has her mother and her Nazi-loving grandmother. So this is basically an unraveling of her family history, also through a queer lens. Next up from Firefly, Korean Cuisine, an illustrated guide. This is really cool. I mean, Korean cuisine is sort of at the forefront, especially here in New York. There are tons of restaurants opening all the time. So this is a step-by-step guide to cooking Korean food with illustrations. Next up, also from Firefly, Everybody Loves Dogs. So over 20 years or so, the photographer took photos of rescue dogs, and that's exactly what it is. Gifty, fun rescue dogs. Most have had homes, but then some still don't. Next up from Inner Traditions, Essential Oils and Gemstone Guardian card. So this is a card deck, basically how to use essential oils and their associated crystals for personal transformation. And then also from Inner Traditions, Self-Healing Chinese Medicine. This is basically all you need to treat yourself with Chinese medicine at home. From Island Press, The Good Garden, How to Nurture Pollinator Soil, Native Wildlife, and Healthy Food, all in your own backyard. All the tricks and tips you need to grow a sustainable garden. For Mountaineers, National Parks A to Z, this is a book for children. Each letter in the alphabet corresponds to an associated national park. It's fun, it's playful, it's really fantastic illustrations. From Backbeat, distributed by National Book Network, Music and Revolution, Greenwich Village in the 1960s. This is a deep illustrated dive into the fertile, creative, and musical landscape of Greenwich Village in the 1960s. Also from Backbeat, this is a paperback edition of Bruce Springsteen's lyrics from 1972 to 2017. First time in paperback, forward by Dave March. This is the definitive book on Springsteen's lyrics. Also from National Book Network, Witches and Warlocks in New York. This is exactly what it says again in the title. Sorry to keep using that. This is a deep dive into legends, victims, and sinister spellcasters in the Empire State. Also from NBN, 50 MGM Films That Transformed Hollywood. This is a fully illustrated dive into the golden age of cinema through MGM. Also from NBN, Secret New York, Hidden Bars and Restaurants. If you're coming to New York and you're tired of all the same places, this is exactly what you need. Hidden bars, secret parks, fun things to do in New York that are off the beaten path. This is from Penn State University Press, Jews of Iran. I didn't know this, but Iran has the second largest Jewish community in the Middle East. So this is a photo essay of that community in Iran. From Pluto Press, The Anti-Capitalist Book of Fashion. This is an updated edition of a book that's sold incredibly well. Basically, it's looking at the politics of fashion, and Emma Watson has chosen this as one of her ultimate books. Also from Pluto, We Are the Elites, why the US Constitution serves the few. This is uncovering the background behind the current crisis in our democracy, including Roe v. Wade, and shows why universal healthcare, environmental regulation, and women's rights are so hard to achieve. From Routledge, 50 Figures in Queer US Theater. This is an overview of 20th and 21st century queer literary and drama highlights. Black Power music, protest songs, message music, and the Black Power movement. Again, this is a deep dive into the music that sparked these revolutions. From Rutgers University Press, A History of Horror. This is the second edition of a best-selling book from Rutgers. Horror films continue to be hits in theaters, so this is not really a scholarly, but a very detailed and in-depth look at horror films. Also from Rutgers, this is kind of an outlier, but it seems like it might be really fun. This is basically a photography book about a key moment in modernism. It's a single photo session between an American writer and an Indian dance pioneer named Ram Gopal. Beautiful photographs, gorgeously illustrated, really lovely book. Okay, next up from Excelsior, which is imprint of SUNY Press, Bob Dylan's New York. This is a guide to Bob Dylan's life in New York from Greenwich Village to Woodstock. It's a walking tour and a history of his time in, again, the Empire State. Also from SUNY, Signs of Distinction. This is a look at all 51 welcome signs in New York State. And so basically it's giving you history through these fun and quirky signs throughout the state. Also from Excelsior and SUNY, the Stork Club Cook and Bar book. You know, we may remember the Stork Club as being the preeminent nightclub in the 20th century until it closed. This is basically how you can live the Stork Club life. Recipes, history, cocktails, you name it. Also from SUNY, New York's Great Lost Ballparks. This is an illustrated look at the ballparks of our New York City's past. From Kentucky University Press, the book of whiskey cocktails. This is a little small gift edition of cocktails, recipes, jokes, everything that you need to create an incredible whiskey cocktail. University of Minnesota Press, Ski Jumpers. Peter Gay has novels with Knopf, and he actually wanted this to go to the University of Minnesota Press, and it's going to be a September Indie Next pick. This is a novel. From University of Pennsylvania Press, John James Audubon. This is an incredible, detailed, and very readable history of John James Audubon. This was previously published hardcover, did really well, and now it's in a paperback edition. From Grub Street, which is distributed by Casemate, Edible Wild Plants and Herbs. This is incredible, like very detailed compendium of recipes and remedies. The perfect guide for every budding forager. And finally, from Casemate, Jewish Flavors of Italy. There's also a large Jewish community in Italy, and this is basically Jewish and Italian cuisine fused together. And that's all I got, with 2 minutes to spare.
That's amazing, Jason. You've had a lot of practice over COVID, and
yeah, I mean,
you're beating all your own times.
This is basically like what, the 6th time that I've done this in this many titles.
That's right.
Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, I'll drop my anything you want. I'll drop my email into the chat.
Thank you, Jason. And up next, we have Nancy with Tin House.
Hi, everybody. It's so good to be here. I am going to talk to you about some fall books I absolutely love and some books I'd love for you to consider for holiday gifts. And looks like the first one on our list is Six Walks by Ben Shattuck. This came out a few months ago. It sold like hotcakes, made a lot of regional bestseller lists. And it's about this guy, Ben Shattuck, who started walking in the woods, going through Thoreau's walks. And it's a meditation on how things are different from the time that Thoreau is doing it and what's the same. It's a beautiful personal book. He did all of these illustrations himself. Definitely check this out. The next one on our list is, I think, Night of the Living Rez. So you guys know this book. It just came out the second week in July. We couldn't be happier with the way this book is selling. We hope it continues through the holiday season. This is a collection by Morgan Talty of short stories, all featuring the same character. And you get this interwoven story of the character D as a child and then as a grown-up. And it all takes place on the Penobscot reservation. And I mean, Morgan Talty is the most extraordinary writer because he can have you laughing and then punch you in the stomach all within 3 sentences. And people are really responding to this. I think that this book is just something special. It got all the media hits. Readers are responding to it. So I hope we can continue to hand sell it all through the year. Night of the Living Res. The Wild Hunt. So this book is just out, but I want to talk about it anyway because I adore it. Emma Seckel, debut author. Guys, I think she's 25 years old. This is absolutely extraordinary if you read this book because the command that she has on this, it checks every box. It's a historical novel. It has horror elements. It has speculative elements. It takes place in World War II. And this woman is going back off the coast of Scotland because her father had just died. And what she finds out is this coast has always been haunted by these Celtic birds called the slua. But what she finds out is they're even worse than ever. And it's because they're carrying the souls of the people in World War II have now died. And they're getting more and more aggressive. And when a young boy on the island goes missing and they have to pair up to figure out what's happened to him, it's just absolutely devastating. So it's just come out. It's gotten great reviews. It was an Indie Next Pick. Star Tribune just called it gorgeous and lovely. So please check it out and make sure that your customers know about that one. The next one I have to tell you about is What We Fed to the Manticore by Talia Kaluri. This book, I think it has probably the most fantastic cover I've ever seen, but this is also a short story collection. And every single one of these stories is written from the perspective of animals. And I just feel like this is a moment where we're all thinking about this. I feel like news story after news story. I just saw Atlantic had a cover story. We're all fascinated about what animals are thinking, what's their level of empathy, and especially as the world is changing so quickly and dramatically, and the environmental changes and how it's impacting these animals, you get a deep dive into the minds and the hearts of these animals and how they're looking at their human friends. It's so gorgeous. I wanted to just quote you what Amy at Bard's Alley said about it. She says, "This book resists pity and despair and finds wonder in the wildest places." And I couldn't agree more. Absolutely check this out if you haven't already, and please request a galley. The House in the Orchard. This is by Elizabeth Brooks, and she did The Orphan of the Orphan of Salt Winds, that booksellers came out so big for this book. And then she did The Whispering House. And we just felt when we read this new manuscript, she just took it to a whole new level. It's also historical. It has 2 different time periods. And one of the standout narrators is this 13-year-old girl who doesn't quite understand the world around her. And lots of reviewers and lots of the authors who've come out for this keep comparing it to Ian McEwan's Atonement. And I think you'll see why, how these ramifications of the sort of naive understanding of a child and how it could have dire consequences to everybody around her. The unreliable narrators in this book are so brilliantly done. I can say that every time the book comes up, we still are arguing in-house about who's bad and who's good in this book. It kind of leaves you questioning, but it opens up this world that is just amazing. So the House in the Orchard, it's creepy, it's historical, and you just can't stop reading it once you start. And then Singer Distance is a science fiction literary novel that just blew me away. It takes place in the 60s and 70s, or the late 60s, early 70s. And what's happening is these MIT students have been trying to figure out this incredible math assignment from Martians. And this idea is that this has been going on for hundreds of years, where the Martians will send down a math proof and the people are expected to solve it. Well, this one proof seems to be unsolvable, except for this one MIT student who thinks she knows the answer, and her boyfriend, also an MIT student, who wants to prove it. this is a book where the fiction and the science are so deeply wound that I had such trouble believing that it was fiction, that there's so many true parts of it. There's so many Easter eggs. A lot of people keep comparing it to the movie Contact, which you would totally get when you start reading it. But they end up going to the desert to solve this proof so that the Martians will be able to look down and be able to see it from space. What they did not anticipate is the impact of celebrity on them and how that's going to affect everything and change their lives forever. This book is just fun. It's one of those things you want to eat up. PW just gave it a really gorgeous starred review. I hope you'll check it out. Wading in waist-high water. So any Fleet Foxes fans out there, they're touring right now. They were just here in Portland. We're huge fans. They're a Seattle-based band, but they're popular everywhere. And Robin Pecknold, the lyricist and lead singer of this book, anybody who's a fan of the music could know that there's a real literary quality to Robin's writing. And what he does in this book is he puts the lyrics down, but then annotates them. So you kind of have a sense of what the craft that went into it. And this is interesting on a writing level. It's interesting on a music level. We have this incredible introduction by Brandon Taylor, who's the biggest fan ever. And that first serial is going to run in the New Yorker, which we're thrilled about. But this book is a lyrics book like nothing I've seen before, the way that he's able to communicate directly with his fans about their most urgent questions about his lyrics. I don't have a galley to show you for this one. We're not doing galleys. I know, I see your face, but I will send you an early copy. This book is gonna blow your mind. It's perfect, perfect, perfect for the gift market. I think that's everything for me.
That is. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nancy, Peter, Jason. We really appreciate you being here today and sharing these wonderful titles with us. And we'll put the links again in the chat. But remember, everyone, we have dinner tonight at 7 o'clock. It's Look Who's in Town with Ross Gay, A.M. Holmes, Christina McMorris, and Matthew Quick. So please come join us today. Thank you, everyone.